Joining me from Lyon is Omar Rajeh, choreographer, dancer, and the founder of Maqamat Beit el Raqs. Over the years, Maqamat has played a key role in shaping contemporary dance in Lebanon and across the region, supporting dancers, creating spaces for movement, and building platforms that last. From founding Bipod, the Beirut International Platform of Dance, to developing projects that travel beyond borders and are presented on major international stages, Maqamat continues to push the boundaries and redefine what dance can be. Omar, welcome to EC Arts.
Hello, Lea.
Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Omar, you founded the Maqamat in 2002. What was happening around you at the time that made you feel this needs to exist now? What gap were you trying to fill?
In 2002, I was coming back from England, where I finished my master's, starting my PhD. And I was actually, part of my PhD was to create a performance. And this is how I started with the first performance, Beirut Jaune, Beirut Safra, which was focused on really the issues, the concerns of myself and other colleagues at university, after university, within this context of Lebanon. It was kind of a spontaneous, I must say, spontaneous reaction to start creation in Beirut, in Lebanon, start with my research. And afterwards, I decided to stay. I was, yeah.
And there was no contemporary dance infrastructure at the time, correct?
It was nearly non-existent. There were a lot of course, classical ballet studios. A lot of people were trying to do dance, mostly modern dance. But I believe the term in itself, contemporary dance, was still something very new for the Lebanese audience at the time. And with Beirut Safra, with introducing this approach to dance, I think things started to take a different perspective at the time. If I may add also, well, at the time in 2002, Beirut was really booming. For me, it was compared to what we're facing today, it was a moment of a lot of creativity, a lot of experimentation, a lot of motivation also for people to do things. So.
And Omar, Bipod was the first contemporary dance platform you founded in 2004. And it quickly became one of the most important dance festivals in the region. It offers a rich international program of performances, lectures, workshops. How important was it for you to create a platform that goes beyond the performances and includes learning and exchange?
You know what I like about Bipod, about the festival, is that it came out of a need. I didn't plan to organize a festival, or I didn't have the ambition at the time to organize a festival. It was a spontaneous, also again, another spontaneous reaction that compared to when I was in London, for example, I was watching performances on like weekly basis. When I decided to stay in Beirut and create in Beirut, I missed this. And the idea is to start a gathering. The idea is to invite several artists that we worked with that in London or in other places to come and perform in Beirut, and to create a kind of an gathering for exchange, for research, for to explore also what we're doing within the context of the city. What made the festival possible, I believe, the audience, the interest of the people in Lebanon, of our approach into dance, and the artists that we were inviting created a lot of interest in, if I remember well, the first edition we had few hundred people. In 5 years, we had like a 3 weeks festival with nearly 7,000 people coming to see the performances. And of course, a lot of international companies, established big companies, but also young and emerging artists.
And Omar, that sense of coming together across cultures seems central to your work, and it's also at the heart of your performance, Beitna. Tell us more about that performance. What's it about? You've been touring for the past 10 years.
Beitna for sure, yes. Beitna we premiered in Vienna in 2016, and we're still touring with it. We went like nearly like to many places, but definitely I wanted to say, of course, this idea of coming from Lebanon, living in Lebanon, growing up in a cultural diversity, I would say, and this kind of richness, at the same difficult, probably with a lot of conflict, but the cultural environment of the country creates this feeling of exploring, of questioning the relationships. So for me, it was always I never felt I'm closed in a sense in one like I was too completely against this idea of labels of putting myself in a certain box, whatever this box is. And with the dynamics of Lebanon at the moment, and with the how things developed, also, I felt it's more and more urgent, extremely urgent, to highlight also these issues that deal with our everyday life, that concerns our everyday life, what we do, how we do things, how we deal with other people, and most important, our perception of things in a country like Lebanon. Well, not only Lebanon, of course, because my concern was also to think of dance as an artistic expression on a wider scale, outside of this idea of nationalism or states or countries. But definitely with the practical everyday life, it became much more urgent to go into issues that concern my life on a personal level, but also the lives of people I'm working with and the communities we live within.
And Omar, the performance, it's sort of rooted in Lebanese traditions. We see this gathering. Your mother is also on stage cooking tabbouleh. It's called Beitna.
Yes. Well,
Tell us more about this idea.
yeah, the idea, of course, the idea of Beit Na, it started with Mia Habis, also my partner. We work together, we create together. And in 2014-15, I decided we decided together to go and stay for a while in the Shuf. I come from Aleen. So we wanted to go outside Beirut and stay. And then I realized like this question of how does what I do in terms of contemporary dance relates to where I come from, relates to these traditions and the Lebanese, but also we had every Sunday nearly gathered, the whole family gathers at my grandfather's house, like maybe nearly every Lebanese house, with the whole family, with friends, with neighbors, and it's, of course, it takes the whole day of eating, drinking, talking, arguing. So this kind of communal gathering, for me, it was interesting to compare it to an artistic gathering, to compare it, where I come from, which I didn't have a choice about. I was born in a certain community, but where I go is my decision, my career, my life, my ideas in life, my decision. It doesn't mean that there's a preference between one or another, but it was interesting to look into this proximity between the two. And I invited three other choreographers, Kuhn from Belgium, Hiroaki from Japan, and Anani from Togo, to work together, to collaborate together on this performance. Plus, of course, four other musicians. At the beginning, it was with Le Trio Joubran that after 1 year of touring, decided that it's not easy for both of our days to combine, but now we have a beautiful group of musicians working in the piece, plus my mom. And we cook. we cook all together on stage, and at a certain moment, the audience, they also share with us this meal, and we continue the performance. So suddenly the whole space of this theater changes. It's for the people, it's an experience not only of watching dance, but also of really being in a kind of a very immersive, participative performance where they smell, and when we start cutting the mint, the tomatoes, the parsley, it's a lot of sensation involved in this piece. I would say it's a very, very successful piece until now. It's always accessible. It's always like the audience, when they watch it, they cannot forget it. I mean, and it's an experience that remains with the people for a very, very long time.
And Omar, how does dance act as a universal language that allows people from different cultures, performers from different cultures, to connect and understand each other?
Well, I mean, dance, I mean, I have like between bracket universal language, I'm not sure, but definitely dance is something very accessible compared to, let's say, language and theater. Uh, what could be I mean, what is interesting for me is not to go into the spectacular direction or form of dance, which is the more entertaining part, but to go more into what we started talking about, this question of dance uh, uh, as a question of presence with our bodies, with the relationships, with how we deal with each other within situations. So for me, the question of dance in this perspective, it is a kind of a wider question towards our presence, our existence. I don't want to go too much into philosophy, but for sure it's. At the end, when we're like for me in general, culture is a kind of a critical form or a critical expression about the everyday life, about society, politics, our human relationships. So definitely from this perspective, dance is also part of this questioning. It goes probably it may be, for me, I feel it goes definitely beyond, because it's a question of our body, our sense of presence, our sense of existence, our physicality, touching, seeing, looking. This is all part also of the dynamics of existing and being in dance, let's say, rather than looking or showing dance.
And resisting as well, right? Because in your solo show, Dance is Not For Us, you use dance as a way to rebel against certain power structures in Lebanon, exploring memory, trauma. Can you share more about this performance and what it actually represents?
Well, I mean, again, growing up in Lebanon, I think this is how the question of dance shifted into a question, of course, of resistance. I felt the most provocative, or at least the strongest tool for me to express my ideas or my criticism towards the context of certain things in Lebanon happening, whether on a political or social level, was this kind of confrontation of dance, the question of being, and how do we go into shaping and of our presence. Like, I don't think it's possible, for example, when I was working in Lebanon, to separate what I do from the everyday life, even if it was a purely aesthetic form of art. I believe within this everyday context of Beirut, of living in Beirut, it's impossible to separate. Otherwise, we'll be living in our bubble, which happened sometimes, of course, um, but it's always a question of the context of where we are. When you're confronted with this amount of like these daily challenges, being in Beirut on all levels, it's not possible to think of art as only as an
A form.
in terms of yes form or aesthetics or in terms of beauty. It becomes for me the art or dance in particular, it becomes a form of action, and this is how it shifts into a resistance. But what is very important also, what's interesting is that I try to protect myself, or at least I aim to not to resist and replicate the structures I'm resisting. And this what dance proposed, because dance is a process of creation, proposed to think of what I want rather than going against the political or the social.
And Omar, congratulations. You're participating in the Venice Biennale this year with your show Dance People, which you choreographed with your wife Mia Habis. And what's actually particularly interesting is that you're inviting spectators to become participants, just like Beitna, rather than just watch. What does it mean for you to create a shared space like this?
Well, yeah, Dance People premiered last year in August at the Edinburgh International Festival. I think this performance is very important in the sense that also it questions the space of culture in itself. It's a question of how do we create cultural gathering. It's very simply the starting point of the performance was how the distribution of space defines our relationships. And this is what I think we're living today. This question of geography, the question of land, but the question of relationships, where at the moment, for example, this is another form of space, where this digital space that we're going into. So the question of space was very important for me in the performance, but also the question of how do we gather in a cultural space is also important. Do we go with these frontalities in conventional theaters with all the values, with all the ideas that they carry, or we look into different gatherings that could reflect the ideas, or at least our perception, or our imaginations or inspirations for the future. Issues of diversity, justice, fairness, questions of ecology, of what kind of cultural gatherings we can go into. And the audience are part of the performance. So it's a very long piece. It's 100 minutes, 1 hour and 40 minutes. And the audience are with us in the same space. We're 10 performers, visual artists, 2 musicians on stage with a lot of movement, a lot of structures. But we define spaces with the audience moving with us, shifting space. The audience, they dance at the same time.
And Omar, your work often turns challenges into gestures of hope, and it acts as a proposal, perhaps, for imagining new possibilities. When you think about Lebanon, do you feel a hope or a sense of responsibility toward the country's future? Does that maybe inspire you to come back or invest your work here?
Well, do we have another choice? I think we don't have a choice. We have to go on. I am positive. I'm saying I'm positive. It's a little bit strange to say positive within what we see with people with the difficulties. With like it's situation is not easy. It's difficult, but this is it. This is the reality, and the question is how to, like you said, how to shift these challenges, these sometimes unbelievable, unacceptable difficulties into ways that we could live within. So I feel it's part of our life. I think dance in this perspective, like to go back also to the solo dance is not for us. I like being in the studio, working in dance for like more than 25 years now. It gave me a lot of stamina, a lot of perseverance towards thinking of the process, not to think always of the end product, not to think always of the end, because at some point there will never be an end. It's a continuous process. So in this perspective, I'm always hopeful. I try to be positive as much as possible. And the work in itself brings a lot of hope, I think.
Thank you so much, Omar. It was an
Thank you,
absolute
Lea.
pleasure to have you on the show. We're looking forward to having you back in Lebanon in July for Bipod. Best of luck.
Very soon. Thanks.
The child in me paints free, wild, untamed. That's how Corneille, one of the founding Cobra artists, described his work, and it sums up the whole movement. In 1948, just after World War II, artists from Copenhagen, Brussels, and Amsterdam met in Paris to sign their first manifesto. They were fed up with the cold geometry of Mondrian, the rigidity of the academy, and endless theoretical debates in Paris. Art had become intellectualized and controlled, but Cobra wanted the opposite: emotion over perfection, spontaneity over rules. They didn't turn to museums or galleries for inspiration. Instead, they looked to ancient Nordic myths, children's drawings, and primitivism, bringing a profound and refreshing sense of renewal. They painted murals, created journals, and celebrated the collective spirit rather than the solitary genius celebrated in traditional Western art. In a Europe still recovering from war, Cobra was rebellion on canvas, urgent, colorful, and unpredictable. That's it for today's episode. Until next time.